Thank you. Further debate? The member from Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Speaker. I am happy to rise today to speak to and support Bill 154, New Deal for Toronto Act 2023. This act covers two schedules. The first, Recovery Through Growth Act, City of Toronto 2023, and Schedule 2, Rebuilding Ontario Place Act 2023. On November 27th, the Province of Ontario and the City of Toronto announced an agreement that will help achieve long-term financial stability and sustainability of Toronto's finances. This deal was achieved after 10 weeks of productive working group discussions to find collaborative solutions to the city's operating and capital deficits. The agreement reached will put Toronto on a path forward that will in turn create greater economic growth for the province and, quite frankly, for Canada. As when Toronto succeeds, Ontario succeeds, and thus Canada succeeds. The following outlines this historic agreement. Firstly, this new deal includes up to $1.2 billion in provincial operating supports over 3 years for critical priorities like safe and reliable public transit and shelter supports for our homelessness. The province will also provide significant capital relief, including by uploading both the Gardiner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway. Secondly, the province will take steps to assume authority for necessary planning approvals to rebuild an Ontario Place that, once completed, will attract millions of visitors to the city year-round, with an agreement to explore relocating the parking structure to the Exhibition Place grounds. Thirdly, Toronto has agreed to meet or exceed the province's housing targets, and as part of that work, identify and make available surplus city lands for building homes. Lastly, our government and the City of Toronto continue to call on the federal government to step up as a full partner with funding in critical areas needed, such as shelter support for asylum claimants and transit funding. As part of this new deal, Ontario has agreed to an investment of up to $1.2 billion in provincial operating supports over 3 years and significant capital relief over the next 10 years, including $300 million in one-time funding to increase transit ridership, promote subway safety, and ensure sustainable operations. This one-time funding will build back ridership through more frequent service, as well as the affordable, convenient, efficient, and safe operation of the subway system. Over $750 million in funding for 55 new subway trains for the TTC's Line 2, conditional on matching the federal support. Procurement of new trains for Line 2 is a top priority for the TTC. To maximize this procurement opportunity, Metrolinx would purchase 15 additional trains for 2 priority transit projects, the Scarborough Subway Extension and Yonge North Subway Extension. Annual operating funding over 3 years, beginning in 2024-25, for a total of $330 million for new subway integrated provincial transit projects, the Eglinton, Crosstown, and the Finch West LRTs. These 2 LRT lines will help move tens of thousands of people faster and more conveniently every day by creating key transit connections integrated with the broader regional transit network, including the TTC subway system. Uploading the Gardiner Expressway and Don Valley Parkway highways to the province will ensure the long-term protection, preservation and enhancement of these vital assets from the risk of despair, and help to maintain these assets for the benefits of drivers and commerce as toll-free highways subject to a third-party due diligence assessment. The City will use the financial benefits of the upload of the Gardner and the DVP to support investments in housing and the infrastructure that supports and enables growth such as transit, water and wastewater infrastructure, and local road improvements. The Gardner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway are nationally significant economic corridors tied to the provincial highway network that support the movement of passenger, transit, and commercial vehicles carrying critical goods and services that support regional, provincial, and national populations, communities, and economies, and one of the largest employment centres in all of Canada. The province will provide operating and capital support for these highways in 2024, while a third-party due diligence process is underway. Regarding the long-term protection, preservation, maintenance, and enhancement to the DVP and the Gardner, I know many people living in my riding who commute to their work in the city use the DVP daily, as it is an extension of the main provincial highway corridors. There are also many people living in the city and commuting north to York Region to work and use the DVP and the Gardner every day. These are crucial arteries to get to and from the heart of downtown Toronto, and by uploading them to the province, I know they will continue to help many Ontarians get to work and come back home quickly to their families and loved ones. Speaker, I'd like to now speak about some own stories. I don't do that often here, but I'm going to now. One story is, I remember back in the 70s. Yes, I know I was a very young child at that point. But yes, in the 70s, I remember my family was living at that time between Hamilton. We also lived in Georgetown, but we always took the QEW and the Gardner to get to Grandma's house. Grandma lived in the Beaches. So if everybody who knows the Gardner, you get on the Gardner, it ends in the Beaches. So I recall as a child, our whole family in the car, going along the Gardner, even watching the CN Tower be built up. Speaker, I got to tell you, I'm telling you this story because since I was a young girl, the Gardner Expressway has been part, not just of Toronto, of Ontario, of our everyday exposure to this great province. So why would the Gardner not be part of a provincial asset? The QEW goes straight into the Gardner. It just makes sense. Another story, and I tell you these stories because it relates to my constituents. Every day I commute from Aurora down to Queen's Park along the DVP, from the 404 right down the DVP. Again, the corridors connect. I know I have constituents who go the opposite way because they live in Toronto. They get on the DVP and go north and on the 404. It is critical for York Region, for all the GTHA, for people in Toronto, that these corridors are highly maintained, and that is what the province is looking to do. Another example, I remember a point in time where I lived in the Beaches and I was working out in Woodbridge. Again, the DVP going north was an habitual, regular daily schedule for me. So for years and years, these roads to me are the provincial corridors that get us around this great province, to come in, to visit family and friends, to go to work, for commerce coming in. It just makes sense. Speaker, This bill will help the city to explore opportunities to assist Toronto with their debt financing, including potential options to lower the city's borrowing costs, help Toronto to partner with the Ontario Infrastructure Bank to support faster delivery of key city building infrastructure while leveraging additional capital from trusted investors. Support Toronto in exploring options to improve financial returns through potential third-party management of city reserve funds, such as through the Investment Management Corporation of Ontario, an independent arm's-length organization that provides broader public sector institutions with investment management services. Next, our government is taking action to bring Ontario Place back to life, making it a remarkable, world-class, year-round destination that's fun for everyone. Years of inaction have caused this iconic destination to become less attractive to tourists, including GTHA community members. We are creating an iconic space that will bring friends and families together right here in Ontario while attracting tourists from around the world. This proposed legislation, if passed, would help mitigate against potential project delays, help streamline certain approvals, and ensure that the new Ontario Place for everyone gets done. By taking these critical steps, we are creating an iconic space that will feature over 50 acres of free parks and public spaces for everyone to enjoy. And as I said before, bringing friends and families together, that's what this is all about, while also attracting all those tourists. There will be community-oriented science programming at the Legacy Ontario Science Centre location as part of a potential future multi-use complete community at Ontario Place. This will build a future for all Ontarians to enjoy visiting as a destination location. The redevelopment of Ontario Place will create thousands of new jobs and attract up to 6 million plus visitors each year. An announcement was made earlier today by the Minister of Infrastructure that Infrastructure Ontario has released its business case for the relocation of the Ontario Science Centre to Ontario Place. This business case confirms that the relocation will save Ontario taxpayers $257 million over a 50-year period when compared to the cost of remaining at the current site, and will also provide a greater share of space for programming than is the case at the current site. The total capital investment required to remain at the Don Mills site exceeds the cost of constructing a new Ontario Science Centre facility at Ontario Place. In addition to providing significant taxpayer savings, 40% of the new Ontario Science Centre will be programmable space, compared to approximately 25% at the current site. Ontario Science Centre's relocation and modernization can be a single capital investment that will benefit two government priorities. Once relocated in Ontario Place, up to 1 million people will visit the brand new facility every year, which will increase traffic into Toronto, bringing new science-based educational programming to the heart of the city and saving hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars in the process. This plan will also be beneficial to the environment, as it will have a smaller footprint with a high-quality exhibits, all within a new energy-efficient, sustainable building. Additionally, as part of this new deal, Toronto has agreed to meet or exceed the province's housing targets, and as part of that work, identify and make available surplus city lands for building homes. The city and province have also committed to the highest and best use of their own lands to meet the goal of building more homes of all kinds, faster, inclusive of rental, affordable, and attainable housing. Furthermore, the city has consistently pointed to operating the capital deficits as being the primary barrier to its success. Ontario agreed to tackle the city's financial challenges head-on. The city will use the financial benefits of the upload of the Gardner and the DVP to support investments in housing and the infrastructure, again, that supports and enables growth such as transit, water, and wastewater, infrastructure, and local road improvements. Toronto will meet or exceed the city's annual housing targets and support density near transit. This will help keep the province's goal to build 1.5 million homes so that all Ontarians, no matter where they live across this province, can realize home ownership, having a roof over their head to call home. And that may look different to everyone. A rental in a building, a condo in a building, a bungalow, a townhome, a semi-detached, etc. Finally, while Ontario and Toronto have taken meaningful action through this new deal to advance key provincial priorities, federal assistance is essential for the city to achieve long-term financial stability. The city and the province continue to call on the federal government to step up as a full partner with funding in critical areas of need, such as shelter support for asylum claimants. That is why $600 million of the $1.2 billion will be used as operating support for shelters for homelessness, conditional on the federal support for refugee and asylum claimants. This support for Toronto's shelter system recognizes the pressure the city faces as it operates approximately half of all shelter beds across this province. Toronto is unique among Canada's cities, both in terms of the challenges it faces and its long-standing and unparalleled contributions to the province's shared success. Contingencies built in and around federal supports required, for example, for asylum seekers and homelessness, is critical as immigration falls under the federal government and the increasing number of immigrants, including asylum seekers, who need the assistance. What we have seen is that asylum seekers come to Toronto for work, but are also being relocated to other parts of the GTHA, as there is not sufficient shelter or housing in Toronto. When they relocate to York Region, the cost associated with the sheltering is then borne upon the region. On April 4th, the Ontario government announced an additional $202 million annually, including an additional $48 million for the City of Toronto in homelessness prevention programs to help those experiencing or at risk of homelessness and to support community organizations delivering supportive housing. This new funding, announced in the 2023 budget, will be provided through the Homelessness Prevention Program and Indigenous Supportive Housing Program and builds on the government's investment of nearly $4.4 billion over the past 3 years to grow and enhance community and supportive housing. Additionally, on September 18th of this year, the Ontario government announced that we were investing another $42 million through the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit Program to support the City of Toronto and other impacted municipalities across the province in providing urgent assistance to a rapidly growing number of asylum claimants and other at-risk populations. Speaker, I know my time is running short, so I want to conclude by noting how our Premier said that Toronto is a major contributor to Ontario and Canada's economic success. Governments need to work together to deliver solutions that provide services, avoid new taxes, and put the city on a path toward long-term financial.
Thank you. Questions and responses? The member from Parkdale High Park.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I thank the member from Newmarket Aurora for her presentation. I asked this question to the Minister of Infrastructure, didn't quite get a reply, so I'm hoping that the member opposite can answer this question for me. So in this legislation, the government prohibits lawsuits with respect to anything done under the Act, including misrepresentation, misconduct, misfeasance, bad faith, breach of trust, or breach of fiduciary obligation. So my question is quite simple. What is in this bill? What is part of the Ontario Place redevelopment plan that makes it necessary to include this in this legislation? Thank you.
From Newmarket Aurora for response.
Speaker, thank you, and I thank the member from Parkdale High Park for the question, and I know the minister did respond to the question. Obviously, we do have a shared vision of Ontario Place. At the end of the day, we want to ensure that Toronto succeeds, because if Toronto succeeds, Ontario succeeds. And that is critical, because we know that Toronto is a vibrant economic and financial hub of this province. The city needs support, and in keeping with this tremendous intake of people that they are experiencing, $600 million in operating support for shelters and homelessness, conditional on the federal support for refugee and asylum claimants, will be provided. Speaker, these are just a few ways that we are using this deal to build a stronger Toronto and Ontario together.
Questions and responses. The member from Burlington.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member from Newmarket Aurora. I want to focus my question around highways. So it's been a great week for Ontario and for Toronto, and we know what happens in Toronto has impacts across the province, and especially for people in my riding in Burlington as part of the GTA. And so that's why getting this new deal was such an important and historic moment for all of Ontario. We've all seen the news about uploading both the Gardiner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway to the province, and I'm hoping the member will go into detail about why this is so important to ensure a better commute for Ontarians, not just in Ontario, but for many of our cities.
Response back to the member from Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the great member from Burlington for her question, and I know this will impact her constituents just like mine as well, because when we upload these highways, we're going to ensure the long-term protection and preservation of these vital assets, and that's what this is about. Consider that these integral highways connect, as I was talking about, they connect with Canada's financial and employment centres. Each of our major highways connect into these. That means our economic engines are all connected together. So, Speaker, just to be clear to this House, the province will not explore any tolling as part of this due diligence assessment.
Response.
The last thing residents of Toronto need are new taxes or tolls. Thank you.
Questions and responses. The member from London North Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member from Newmarket Aurora for her presentation. There were many fanciful things that were included within this, but when we look at the legislation itself and we think about this deal, it really is truly a sweetheart deal that this government is handing over to a private luxury spa operator. And it's very curious. I'd like to know from the member, why is the government and why does the government need to give itself such extraordinary power to push through this project on behalf of a private luxury spa operator?
Response back to the member from Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member opposite for the question. We know that the Ministry of Infrastructure has been working really hard over these past 3 years with Indigenous community partners, stakeholders, the City of Toronto, all in the effort to realize our government's vision for the redevelopment of Ontario Place. We have also held extensive public consultation since 21. In fact, there's well over 9,200, in fact, participants who have shared their input and ideas for the redevelopment of Ontario Place. And I have to say that this is going to allow our government to proceed with the redevelopment in a timely manner. And we will continue to consult with our partners, stakeholders, and Indigenous communities so that we can rebuild Ontario Place and make it the iconic place that it was and that it deserves to be today and into the future.
Further question, the member from Kitchener-Conestoga.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I want to go back to what the member from Burlington was highlighting in regards to the Don Valley Parkway. I think most of us here know it better as the Don Valley parking lot. And certainly looking to see some much-needed investment in that highway, and it's a huge link, I know, to the member from Newmarket Aurora's community. There's some great work already going on with Highway 404, and just like to get maybe a little bit more as to how you think the province is now going to be able to work a little bit better collaboratively to build out, expand, maintain that piece of the highway that is such a crucial piece for not only the people of Toronto, Madam Speaker, but people across Ontario.
Response, the member from Newmarket Aurora.
Well, I thank the member from Kitchener-Conestoga for the question because, yes, DVP is critical for my constituents. And many people I know call it the DVP parking lot as well, too. And it's important that the uploading is carefully overseen, thus the due diligence going on. The member as well is correct. When I drive on the 404, I can go quite nicely. But once you hit the DVP, when you merge onto that, all of a sudden it takes approximately an hour plus to carry, go 12 kilometers to my exit, which is crazy. So I see the province being able to provide greater expansions like we're currently doing on the 400 series of highways. Thank you.
Further questions? The member from Spadina-Fort York.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank the member from Newmarket Aurora for your comments today. And I'm glad to hear that this Conservative government isn't planning on imposing new tolls on the Gardiner or the Don Valley Parkway, because certainly people in the GTA are already suffering enough under the tolls on the 407 when the last Conservative government sold the 407 for $3.2 billion, about a tenth of its actual value, although we will be suffering under those tolls for another 65 years. This deal here that we're talking about is a 95-year deal that this government's making with an Austrian corporation. And in this legislation, it says specifically that the government is protecting itself from breach of trust, breach of acting in bad faith, breach of fiduciary obligations, and misfeasance. And misfeasance is the wrongful exercise of lawful authority. So my question is, what wrongful exercise of lawful authority has this Conservative government exercised that they feel they need to protect themselves from with the legislation?
Further response, Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member from Toronto. What is that? Toronto Centre. No, that's Fort George. Yes, Fort George. Okay, north or whatever. Okay, thank you. To answer the question, Madam Speaker, as noted, Toronto and the province has a shared vision. And this is what this deal has, why it's come together. And that shared vision is to ensure that the redevelopment of the Ontario Place can continue as planned. And the new deal brokered between the City of Toronto and our government actually addresses the need to advance the approval process so that our government can get the job done.
Response?
Yes, by streamlining certain approvals, this new deal, coupled with this legislation, would help mitigate against future delays and will ensure that our government delivers for the people of Ontario for this project. Thank you.